Hey guys, Stephen Cox here, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of theory-related stuff applied to the U-bass. So if you like videos like these, please hit subscribe below, consider becoming a patron, and today we're talking about the modes of the major scale. So if you're familiar with this idea of modes, I'm going to dive a little bit deep on them, not super deep, and basically introduce what they are, why it's good to know them, and how you can use them and how you can recognize them. So that's kind of the goal today, is just going through the modes individually and then talking about how they're similar and how they're different. This requires a little bit of a background in theory. So first I'm going to explain what the major scale is, and then explain what a minor scale is, and give you two ways to break down the modes. One of them is called relative, and one of them is parallel. So we'll cover all this stuff, and hopefully it'll make sense by the end of it. If something doesn't make sense, please let me know in the comments, because I'm sure other people have questions as well. And let me know that the volume is good on here, and I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, Jeff. And we're just going to do a lot of this in C starting off. So first of all, we need to know what a major scale is. If you don't already know, I have a few videos on it, but I'm going to cover it very briefly. All right, thank you for letting me know the volume's good. So first, this is a major scale. You can play it across 3 strings. You can play it on 1 string. If you can get the U-bass to not buzz. But basically, what it is it's a set of notes. You've heard it before, like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And if you're not familiar with scales, they're just the building blocks of music, basically. So if you listen to a whole bunch of different styles, a whole bunch of different music, it's just everywhere. And if you listen to classical music, a lot of it's composed of pieces of the scale in a row, jumping around in different scales and whatnot. But most songs remain in one scale for the majority of the song, and sometimes they change a little bit as they go. But a lot of times we're staying in one scale. So the scale itself, this one was C major. The notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay? And if you don't know this already, we can build it on 1 string using sets of whole steps and half steps. A whole step is where you start on 1 note and then skip over a fret, and a half step is just where you go up to the next fret. So a major scale is going to be, you start on this note, so you haven't taken a step yet. Then you're going to take a whole step, another whole step, then a half step, then a whole step, another whole step, another whole step, and then a half step. And that's the whole scale. So you can do that all in 1 string, or you can use the 5-fret rule to take these notes down a string. So if I play a C note, then a D note, this next note right here is E, and it's the 7th fret on the A string. But if we wanted to, we could subtract 5 frets from that and end up with the 2nd fret and go down to the D string. So that's just a way that we get this pattern over here. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you a minor scale real quick. And by the way, the major scale is also called the Aeolian mode. And so that's the first mode of the major scale. Okay, so now let's talk about, we'll explain what that means in a second. But now let's talk about a minor scale pattern, because what we're going to need to know is a major scale and a minor scale pattern, and then we're going to do certain things to those to turn them into the different modes. So a minor scale looks like this. So what we have here is C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. If you'd like the frets, it's 3rd fret on the A string to 5th fret to 6th fret. Now we're going to switch to the D string, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6th fret. Now we're going to switch to the G string, 3rd fret, and 5th fret. Okay, so that's also a certain mode of a major scale, which sounds very strange, right? But I think I should demonstrate this really with doing A minor rather than doing C. But we're going to talk about what's called a relative minor scale to a major scale. And basically, if we play C major and we play A minor, those are actually the same set of notes, just starting on a different note and ending on a different note. So let me explain what I mean by that. So at the C major scale, we don't have any sharps or flats. We're doing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. When we're doing the A minor scale, we also don't have any flats or sharps. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And that's our natural minor scale. So basically, these are both scales that are made of not using sharp or flat notes, which means they consist of the same notes. We have a musical alphabet that starts on A and ends on G, and then it starts over on A again. So you could go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and you could keep going on forever. But if we just go from one A to another A, that's the A minor scale. But using the same set of notes, but starting on a C and going to the next C, then we end up with a major scale. So this might be kind of confusing because a lot of people hear that like minor scales sound completely different than major scales. How can that be that they're made up of the same notes, but they can sound so different? And the answer is when you're playing a song that's in major versus minor, you're resolving to a certain note. So like when you play a C major scale, or you play a song that's in C major and feels very major, it's because you're placing C at the center of everything. Sometimes you're starting phrases with C. Most of the time when you're resolving phrases, so like if you were to like create a musical sentence, you might start on C and end on C, or at the very least start on something in the scale and end on C, if that makes sense. Yeah, so major sounds really happy and everything, but it's the same set of notes as A minor. So we got C major scale is relative to the A minor scale, which means they consist of the same letter names, no sharps, no flats for the case of C major and A minor. Okay, so when we make C our point where we resolve, so like if we were to make a groove out of this, you notice how I'm hitting C a lot, and I'm starting on a C and I'm ending on a C. I'm really making that note feel like the most important note in the scale. And when I do that, that's playing in C major, and it really feels happy, major, kind of peppy, kind of fun. It doesn't matter really what rhythm I play. I could play in different time signatures. I could do all sorts of things. Right, and it still sounds pretty happy. It still sounds like a major scale because I'm using that set of notes, and I'm really drawing importance to the note C in a lot of ways. But if I do the same thing, but I make A the most important note, and I just keep playing it and coming back to it, right? And so I'm using the same set of notes. I'm going to use a lower A too. It kind of already has this like kind of almost sad sound to it instead, because A is like the new center of everything. And so when we do that, we're centering around an A minor chord instead of a C major chord. So our A minor chord sounds kind of sad. Right? Whereas our C major chord sounds rather happy. So there's different ways of playing the C major chord. Okay, So if we're centering around that chord, we're resolving to that note C. That's how we know that we're making it sound major versus making it sound minor. If we resolve to that A and we center everything around that A and we're really accentuating the A note with the same set of notes, all of a sudden it sounds minor, it sounds sad. Okay, so both of these scales are relative modes of C major. And we have names for them. When you just play the C major scale, you can also call that the Ionian mode. So the Ionian mode is the same thing as just playing a major scale. Okay, and then the Aeolian mode, that's the minor scale. So that's one way we can think of the modes, is we can think of them as they start on, in the relative way, they start on different notes. But they use the same notes to create each mode as the original major scale. So relative modes, we have C major, we have D Dorian, we have E Phrygian, we have F Lydian, and we have G Mixolydian. I'm going to go down the octave, but we have A Aeolian, which is that minor scale. We could also play it down here. Right? And then we have B Locrian. So that's one way to think of the modes. We can think of them all as, all of those are modes of the C major scale. C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian. They all start on different notes, but they all consist of the same set of notes when you play them out. There are no sharps or flats in any of those modes. Okay, but that's one way to think of the modes. That's one way to organize them. So you could literally just play the notes of C major, but if you start on D and end on D, it's D Dorian. If you start on E and end on E and kind of make E the center of everything, then that's E Phrygian, so forth. Okay, so the other way that you can think about the modes is if they were all starting on the same note, but consisted of different notes. So these are not relative. They don't consist of the same set of notes, but let's say they all start on C. So C Ionian, that would still be one. Then we could do C Dorian now. And so that one does not use the same notes. You could tell I had an E flat in there, right? And when I was doing C major, I had an E natural. So instead of this note, I replaced it with that note. Okay, so I know I'm kind of moving quick, so hopefully y'all are hanging in there. If you have any questions about this, please let me know in the chat so that I can kind of explain it a little bit more in depth for you guys. Because if you have a question about it, somebody else probably does too. Okay. But yeah, so I could play C Ionian, C Dorian, C Phrygian, C Lydian, C Mixolydian. Okay, then C Locrian, sorry, C Aeolian. I forgot about that one. That's just a straight up minor scale. So that's the C minor scale this time. Then C Locrian. Whoops. That's C Locrian right there. And then we're back to C major, because that's all the modes at that point once we get to Locrian. So basically you can tell they all sound a little bit different, and they all belong in different scales. So C Ionian is the C major scale. C Dorian is pulled from the B flat major scale set of notes, and so forth. So they're each from different keys, right? Different major scales. If we start on the same note and use a different set of notes. Okay. When we do it this way instead of playing it the other way, it's not the same. Let's see. Ever thought about how music is like? Yeah, so music and music theory, I mean, it is totally like its own language for sure. But I totally agree with you there. But let's keep going with this. So we've got all these modes, and some of them have like certain notes in it. So like if you were to assign a chord to each one of these modes, some of them would be based around a major chord, and some of them would be based around a minor chord. So if we were to play C Ionian, that's the C major scale. So it makes sense that you'd center everything around a C major chord, which is a C, an E, and a G. So a guitar player could stick on that, you know, that C chord, basically, or just resolving to that C chord a lot. And that would make it sound like we're in C major, right? But when you get to C minor, that scale, or C Aeolian, if you want to think about it as a mode, obviously a C minor chord fits better with that. But all of the other modes fall under one of these, where basically the chord that goes along with them would either be major or minor. So Ionian is a major mode, Dorian is a minor mode, Phrygian is a minor mode, Lydian is a major mode, Mixolydian is a major mode because the 3-note chord that goes along with it would be a major chord. So Aeolian is a minor mode, and Locrian is the weird exception. That one actually goes with the diminished chord. Or I'll do it in C, sorry. So if we have the Locrian scale, we'll go with a diminished chord instead. Okay. So why am I telling you this? What does this all mean? This is kind of crazy, right? So basically, if we have a major mode, I'm going to explain it to you as in we take the major scale and we change one note within it, or 2 notes within it, to make it a different mode. And honestly, with the major modes, it's just 1 note for each of those. And if it's a minor mode, we're going to start with the minor scale and then alter 1 or 2 notes with it. And the only one that will alter 2 notes in it is the Locrian mode. So here we go. C Ionian is just the C major scale. It's obviously a major mode. Everything's normal there. Nothing crazy. So now, see, now C Dorian. Okay. So C Dorian it starts out sounding more minor. It's a minor mode. But what we're going to do is we're going to go up the scale like normal, and then raise the 6th note of the scale up a fret. So if I were to do a minor scale, it would look like this. And if I were to do a Dorian mode, that note changes. Notice how I reached forward there. You can either play it here or you can play it there. But I raised the 6th note of the scale up 1 fret. Does that make sense? Every other note was just like the minor scale, except the 6th note of the scale got moved up 1 fret. So that's the Dorian mode. Okay, so it's still centered around a C minor chord, but that raised 6 almost gives it a jazzier vibe. So each one of these modes kind of has a vibe to it. I think of a major scale as having a happy vibe, or having like just kind of a straight up happy vibe. Straight up kind of like classical music uses it a lot. It's a real common thing. Joy to the world, you know, ode to joy, all those things. It's a very joy driven mode, right? So Ionian, think the word joy, I guess, because there's a lot of songs with joy in it use the Ionian mode. Dorian is kind of jazzy. Right? Right. So it kind of has a jazzier sound. There's something about raising that 6 that makes it sound less like dark and mysterious and creepy or sad, one of those, which is what the minor scale sounds like. But raising that 6th note of it makes it sound kind of jazzy. There's a few reasons for that, but we'll just go with that. That's the personality of it. And the Dorian mode is a minor scale with a raised 6. So now we're going to move on to the Phrygian mode. So the Phrygian mode is very similar to a minor scale. This time we're just going to flat the 2nd note. So we start on C, then we immediately play a D flat, then E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. So fret-wise, that would be 3rd fret, 4th fret, 6th fret on the A string, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6th fret on the D string, 3rd fret, 5th fret on the G string, and that's the whole mode. So I kind of think this almost has like a Spanish guitar sounding vibe, like a lot of these songs, you know, that kind of stuff. It just sounds very Phrygian. And so Phrygian's a minor mode, which means we still play a C minor chord, but all of a sudden we have this cool. There's something about that half step and still the mode being minor, but it just gives it this kind of unique quality that's just really cool. So that's the Phrygian mode, a minor scale with a flatted second, which means you take the second note of the scale and drop it down a fret. So first note, and if we're playing the minor scale, we would just drop the second note down a fret. Okay, so does that kind of make sense so far? It's all about these resolutions. We're still resolving to a C minor chord, a C minor sound, but we have that flatted second, and it just totally changes the vibe of the scale. And you can kind of compare it. Like if you hear a song that's in Phrygian, you kind of know it kind of has this sort of vibe. You can tell that it's not just in a minor scale. You'd be able to describe it somehow, like, oh, it sounds like this Spanish guitar song I've heard or something, you know? So I like comparing these modes to stuff that I've heard before. Maybe you guys can come up with some specific examples. For me on Phrygian, it's also the song that, or it's also the mode that Metallica used for Wherever I May Roam. Oh, sorry. If I put it all in the same octave, you can tell it's all within the mode. But to me, that is what it reminds me of. And so you can tell it has a very unique personality that's different from the minor scale. There's something that almost makes you want to like raise your eyebrow when you hit that note. I don't know. At least that's what it does for me. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But it kind of just gives it a totally different vibe. So that's the Phrygian mode. So I wish I had these like things that I could just pull up on screen so that you could see Phrygian mode, minor scale with the flat second, which just means lowering the second note a fret, and every other note's like the minor scale. Okay. Lydian is the next one, and this one is a major mode. So we're going to build it off of a C major chord. It goes with that, right? And we're going to use the major scale to figure out what this scale is. So here's what it sounds like first. And this is the only one that I have yet to do a devoted video to. So at some point soon, there'll be a Lydian, mode and groove video separate of these live streams. So we've got this. It's the C major scale with a raised fourth note. So that means we're playing C major. First note's the same, second note's the same, third note's the same. Instead of playing the fourth note, instead of playing F, we're going to skip over that note and go to F sharp instead. And the rest of the scale is just the same notes. So this is the mode that the Simpsons theme uses. So if you're trying to figure out some way to remember it, there's some sort of like almost like a floating kind of vibe. Like you feel like, or at least to me, it feels like it has this like floating quality to it. So the Simpsons uses it, the Jetsons uses it. When you hear, let's see, Tom Sawyer, that keyboard part in the middle of the Rush song, Tom Sawyer, that kind of uses the Lydian mode too. And what's another good example? Rush's song "Free Will." That also uses the Lydian mode. So hopefully that helps a little bit. All right. I'll have to get to some of these other questions later. We're kind of in the middle of going over the modes, and this is a very, very deep thing, but I will get to some of these questions just so you guys know. I'm not like ignoring you guys. I'm seeing every question y'all are asking. I will get to those after this. If they're related to the modes or scales, then I might answer the question as we go. But that's the Lydian mode. It's a major scale with a raised fourth. So if we were playing this off of C, the notes would be C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. Right. And that's still using notes of the mode. They're just down low. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea. I think of it as having like this floaty kind of vibe, you know? It's kind of this kind of dreamy, kind of floaty sort of sound to it. So that's the Lydian mode. So up next, we have probably some bass players' favorite mode, which would be the Mixolydian mode. And this is a major mode as well, but it has a flat 7. So it's a major scale with a flat 7th note. Okay, so what that means is, if we were spelling it out, C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C. So this is where we get a lot of our blues patterns, and this is why I consider it like a bass player friendly mode. Have you ever heard this bass line? Very common pattern. You know, that whole thing. So that's basically a bunch of notes from the Mixolydian mode. And it's really outlining a dominant 7 chord sound. But right now we're still just thinking of it as a major mode because we're thinking of the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. And the root, the 3rd, and the 5th make up a major chord still. So it's our bluesy mode. So it's not the blues scale. That's a totally different thing. And that's not actually one of the modes of the major scale. So it's its own separate thing. It's just slightly different than some of these other things. But when we come up with bass lines, a lot of times we are using the Mixolydian mode. Like all those patterns, they're outlining this Mixolydian mode. So that's, once again, a major scale with a flat 7. So Dorian was jazzy, and it had a more of a minor sound, and Mixolydian is really bluesy and has more of a major sound. So, but they're very similar scales too. If you really look at it, there's only one note different between those two, and that's the note that makes them the difference between major and minor. But kind of an interesting idea. They're very similar. All right, so the next one is the Aeolian mode. That is just our straight up minor scale. Nothing changed about it at all. So this one just sounds either sad or kind of like creepy or mysterious or something. So just depending on how you use it. So I kind of think about that scale as just those things, right? It's either sad, mysterious, or kind of creepy sounding, right? And a lot of bass lines that use it. One is Feel Good Inc., if you know the Gorillaz song. So you could do it in C instead, just to see that it uses the notes of the shape, but it's really in, I think, E minor. At least I usually play it in E minor. So that's one example. Another example of the Aeolian mode, or just a straight up minor scale being run in order, is if you listen to Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne. Basically, underneath the guitar solo, there's this nice little bass part. And it's basically just repeating notes but it's the minor scale in order, just running down. And in this case, it's F sharp minor. And you're just going. So you're just hitting certain notes more than others, but it's just a minor scale running down. If you did it in C, it would sound like this, C minor. But anyway, that's just some example of the minor scale. It gets used a lot in metal and kind of hard rock. It gets used a lot in hip hop kind of stuff. So So Fresh, So Clean, if you're familiar with Outkast. It's literally, all that stuff. It's literally just notes of the minor scale kind of arranged in a different order, but you can still tell it's very much centered around C and very much centered around that C minor sound. So that's a really good example of it too. But there's a lot of other things, a lot of other songs that use minor. That's not too crazy. That's also called the Aeolian mode. Aeolian. Okay, Lian, I think. Aeolian. Yeah, so Fresh, So Clean is very, very minor sounding. Another one, there was I think Colt 45 by who does that one? Afroman? Is that Afroman? Technically, that one could be either minor or Dorian, but you can really tell that it's outlining minor because it's not hitting that sixth notes. There's nothing that makes it sound jazzy. And so if it doesn't sound jazzy and it kind of has that vibe, we would probably just assume it was minor versus assuming it was Dorian if we didn't have that note in there. But, it technically could be either. And that's kind of cool too. When things are open-ended, you can kind of decide which mode you want to play for the time being. V baseline sounds Aeolian. Yeah. So I think Aeolian, I'm going to make sure I have the spelling right so I can spell it right. Apparently I can't do it off the top of my head. Aeolian. Interesting. I looked it up on Google and it turns out, let's see. Yeah. And so Aeolian means relating to or arising from the action of the wind. So something about the wind. This is the windy mode, I guess. Who knew? I learned something today with you guys. So I'm glad to teach you guys because I learned stuff, right? Okay. So that's the Aeolian mode. And then the next one, we have the Locrian mode. And this is probably the least used mode. If you watched my video a few weeks ago where it was like how to make like a spooky sounding bass line, the Locrian mode is the next one. And it's really not major or minor. It really outlines a diminished chord. And so a diminished chord has a root, a flat third, so like the third from a minor scale, but then it also has a flatted fifth. So it's just a very dissonant sounding chord. I'm going to have to play it in a different place in order to get all three of those notes out so that you can hear it. So I'm going to play the C up here. So it's a little bit dissonant, right? And so here's what the mode sounds like that goes along with that. It really sounds like it wants to resolve here, which would make it just the major scale, but we don't let it resolve. So because of that, it's the most tense sounding mode because we're resolving to the note right next to the one that would make it major. So it just feels very tense, very almost like an evil sounding mode or something. I don't know. It's very similar to Phrygian if you just do this much of it. But then it has this note in it too, which makes it a little more dissonant. So you could think of this from the minor scale, but then you're going to change 2 notes of it instead of just 1. So if we had our C minor scale, we're going to flat our 2nd note, which means bring our 2nd note down a half step, down 1 fret. And then we're going to bring our 5th note down 1 fret as well. So that would be, in the case of C Locrian, that would be the 3rd fret, the 4th fret, and the 6th fret on the A string. Then on the D string, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 6th fret, and then on the G string, 3rd fret and 5th fret. So this is like the most brutal sounding mode, I think. You know, so like if you're trying to make a real heavy thing, you could add distortion to that and go. You know, you can make it really. It just sounds very dissonant, right? So that's kind of the point of that one. So if you can think of examples of the Locrian mode, I have trouble finding them. I feel like sometimes Primus might use it, but they might really just be doing more dissonant stuff that actually uses stuff outside of just one mode to make it sound dissonant. But whenever they do a diminished chord, it gives it that kind of Locrian sound. So that one is just very, very dissonant and very tense. So if you have an example of songs that use that, that would be cool if you could put one in the chat. But it's very hard to find examples of that one because a lot of people just feel like it's too uncomfortable to listen to. So I consider it like a very brutal kind of mode, a very unstable sounding, just very, you know, it's good for metal. It's good for heavy metal, but I wouldn't use it unless you're trying to create a tense vibe. So like in soundtracks, you might hear it or something because it creates a lot of tension. So that's really it for all those. So that was the way of going through the parallel modes, meaning starting on the same note. So if I start on C, once again to recap, C Aeolian is just the C major scale. Then C Dorian is a minor scale with a raised 6th note. So we just raise the 6th note up 1 fret. Okay. Then Phrygian is a minor scale with a flat 2nd. Then Lydian is a major scale with a raised 4th note. Okay. Mixolydian is a major scale with a flat 7th. So I'm accenting the note that's different about them. Then Aeolian's just our minor scale. Okay. Then Locrian is our minor scale with a flatted 2nd and a flatted 5th. Yep. So it sounds very metal, very kind of like you might hear that in soundtracks and like horror movies or something, or when something just bad and very intense is happening. But that's pretty much it. So they all have different vibes. And what I would do if I were you guys is try to make up a groove using each one, or you can go through the videos that I've made for a lot of these. I think I'm probably going to make a playlist out of them as soon as I get the last one up about the Lydian mode, which will probably come out before the end of the year. But hopefully that helps a little bit. All right, so we got some questions about the modes. So it says, hi, noob question. Are tunes always in one particular mode? Can you mix modes? Yes, you can. So an example of mixing modes, there's a song by Miles Davis called So What? And when you play the first part, you're really playing in the Dorian mode in the beginning for the bass line of it. And then once it opens up to the solos, you're just playing a minor chord. And so it's like if you're playing a D minor chord, you could play any of the minor modes over that and they work because there's nothing in those extra notes that clash with the chord, right? So So sometimes people will go back and forth between Dorian and between Phrygian and between the Aeolian modes, and you could literally just have it against a drone note or something. I wish I had a. I guess I could do it all on one string or something. Let's see. So if we had everything going against a D note. That's just the minor scale. Now I'm going to make it Dorian. I might make it Phrygian. Now I'm back to minor. Dorian. Minor. So if you have a note that you're pedaling against or a chord that you're playing all the notes against, you can mix the modes. And that does happen a lot. Another example of mode mixture happens in a lot of songs. So like when you're playing in the key of C major, you might have a chord progression that happens, right? Where you play a C major chord, an F major chord, and a G major chord. And then you go back to a C chord. So that's your 1, 4, 5, 1 progression in C major. But sometimes songs will have an F minor in there instead. Right? And it gives it this different vibe that's kind of a very melodic, cool sound. Yeah, major, and it goes minor. And it creates cool melodies, and it's very cool. But literally what you're doing there is you're borrowing that F minor chord from C minor and throwing it in a song that's really essentially in C major. So yes, you can do that. Another one that's really common that people do is you're in the Ionian mode, you're playing something major, then all of a sudden you hit the flat 6, the flat 7, and then you go back to the Ionian mode here. So if you've heard that before, that's borrowing the chord built off of the 7th note, or sorry, built off of the 6th note and then the 7th note of the minor scale and throwing them into the major scale. So that's mode mixture. So it's taking stuff from the Aeolian mode, the parallel Aeolian mode, and throwing it into there, which means taking some chords and some notes from C minor and just throwing them into C major to make the song take a turn in a weird way, if that makes sense. So so if somebody uses the minor 4 chord, you know, basically what they're doing is they're borrowing that from the parallel minor. So if you have the C major scale and you're doing a chord progression in that, and then you borrowed a chord that's not in the C major scale, but it is in the C minor scale, and threw that in there. That's an example of mode mixture. So that is a thing. And so that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is if you're, once again, playing against a major chord or a minor chord, you can kind of go in and out of these modes. If you want to create a different vibe during a solo or something, and it's just the band is just playing one chord, well, then that really frees you up to be able to do this and kind of go back and forth between them. I think it's a really good idea to kind of separate it into sections so people know that you're intentionally doing that and it's not just like hitting a wrong note. So it's like having a whole section of the song that's doing the Lydian mode instead of Ionian. So it's very obvious that you keep going back to the sharp 4 and, you know, making it very clear. And then when you're done doing that, you can go back and, you know, make sure that they hear the F repeatedly, like, hey, this wasn't a mistake. This is me making a statement where I'm making it sound floaty for a minute and now bringing it back in. So I should probably plug up the loop pedal. I think that would be a good idea and kind of demonstrate what that might happen. So what that might sound like. So I could like loop a major chord and then do that. But that's an excellent question, Mega ZB. Great question. So I'm going to go through that. And then since that question was related to the modes, I hit that one up first. But there are some other questions on here. Maybe I'll answer them before I plug in that loop pedal and do that. But I'll give some examples there. So is it Timur, Timur? He says, Broski, do you play guitar? And the answer is yes, I do also play guitar. Bass is my main instrument, bass, U-bass, all these things, but I do play guitar as well. And a lot of times people do a lot more modal things. It's easier to see kind of the relationship of all this stuff on guitar because you play more chords as well. So if you're playing a lot of solos and chords, or you're doing a chord progression and then soloing over that chord progression, it's easier to see both those aspects on guitar if you're used to doing both of those things. Whereas on bass, we're not used to playing chords. Typically, people don't want us to play chords because they end up sounding kind of muddy. When you have a whole band going on, it fills the sound out too much. But you can, you can play chords at times. It's just good to not over muddy things up. Okay. There's another question. I'll answer the other question real quick. Let's see. What was the other one? Can you get a John McVie growly sound on this U-bass? His bass line and Fleetwood Mac's chains. I know the bass line you're talking about. Growly, I would probably give it more mids and a little more treble, so I'm getting more string noise. Right? So I'd probably just, yeah. So that maybe giving it a little more treble and mids, but still having a lot of low in there too. But you can just hit the notes a little bit harder if you want a little bit of a growl to it. But I think you could kind of get in the ballpark of his tone, but it's different still. I don't know if you could match it exactly with the U-bass, but you could kind of get somewhere in the ballpark. All right. Wanted to drop in and slam the like. Theory is something I struggle with, so these videos are awesome for me. Wish I could hang out. Yeah, so if you have questions about the theory, if something in here is like, hey, it went from a jump where it's like, okay, I kind of understood what was happening, and then you lost me here. If you let me know where that was, sometimes I can fill in the gap by explaining it in a different way or something. That's something I like to do. It's a good challenge as a teacher to try to explain it kind of until someone gets it. Like, hey, let's try this way of learning it. Okay, that didn't click. We'll try this other way of communicating it. But yeah, always, if you have questions, let me know. But yeah, I love doing the modes and everything. So now I'm going to demonstrate with the loop pedal some ideas of mode mixture and maybe just of the modes themselves against the chords so that you can kind of hear that as well. So let me unplug some things and plug some other things in. I think that through very well. Okay. All right. So we got that. This will go here. Now, I want to mention this loop pedal is on its last leg, or it at the very least has a short in it. So I'm going to have to fix that at some point, but haven't yet. So bear with me if it shorts out on me a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to plug this in here. And plug this back in. All right. And I know this is kind of a silly thing to say, but for people that don't know what I'm doing with the chords and stuff, I'm basically plugging things in a certain order so the amp doesn't clip. If you unplug the cord from the amp first and just pull it out a little bit, then you can do everything with the other chords, and it usually doesn't click from that end. But if you were to pull it out of the bass first, it would. I know that's some very basic stuff, but some people on here aren't used to using an amp. So if you're someone that's not used to using an amp, then that's just some good etiquette to know to not hurt your speaker, basically. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is just kind of like loop a C major chord. Oh, and it's going to short out on me right away just from clicking the pedal. Let me delete that one, and hopefully it won't do it this time. We'll see. Oh, that was a terrible loop. Sorry about this, guys. Technical difficulty, and then I'm technically being difficult too. Okay. Oh man, it's either the chord or it's the pedal. It might be both. Let's see. Okay. Okay, it's not clicking at all. I apologize, guys. I think this is gonna be a little bit difficult today. But I'll give you the idea in a second. So let me answer one more question while I'm trying to get this to work. Are these a good idea for a beginner, or would you recommend just sticking with a typical electric bass? I think you can do either. I do think that maybe for like younger players, starting on this might be super beneficial. I think for players that plan on playing electric bass mainly, but are just doing this one kind of as a start or for fun, you're going to have a little bit of a learning curve when you transition from something this size to a full-size bass, because you're just going to realize how much more you have to stretch your hands out, and you're going to realize how much harder you have to push down. So I don't think there's anything wrong with learning at first. I don't think there's anything wrong with learning your theory and everything else on here. I just feel like it's almost an easier transition from doing the one that's harder to push down and harder to play, moving to this, rather than moving from this to one that's harder to play and really having to kind of revamp your playing. Like, for instance, I started on electric bass and then came over to this. So when I play certain things, I have to play them differently using different fingers, because the way that I played it on the electric bass allowed me to use a different fingering, and here things are too close together to do some of those same things. So like, for instance, if you were playing an octave on the U bass, it might be more comfortable to use your pointer finger and your ring finger, but because the frets are spaced out more on the electric bass, it might be more comfortable for the same frets on an electric bass to use your pointer finger to your pinky when you're down low on there. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But yes, if you have smaller hands, or if you already have a wrist issue or some sort of like carpal tunnel or arthritis or any of those kinds of things, then U-bass is your friend. You know, it's like somebody that had trouble playing an electric bass or an upright bass, and they want to keep playing, but their hands hurt too much when they play. This is like a really good instrument for them, because you barely have to push down at all. It takes very little pressure pushing down. So it doesn't take the force that the other instruments would. But I think you could start on it. You just have to have that in mind if you're planning on playing both, that there may just be a little bit of an adjustment as you go to the full scale bass. So I hope that helps. Okay, so let's see. If I can just get this loop, I can play over it, and then I won't have to hit the pedal again. Okay. Okay, I think the pedal just entirely broke. All right. Yeah, when I'm mashing it, it's not recording now. It's time for a new looper, I think. I'll try one more time, and otherwise I might have to give up on it. Got it. Okay. So let's say we're playing Aeolian. And then now I want to go Lydian. Right? So you can kind of go back and forth between them if the chord is staying the same. So that's major. And now I'm going to go Lydian. So that gives you an idea. I can go Mixolydian and make it sound a little bluesy. I'm going to make it major. Now Lydian. Okay, so that's an example of doing kind of mode mixture and going back and forth between the different ones. So that's all the major modes. So if I can get it to work, I'll try it with the minor modes a little bit and just give you an idea. So crossing my fingers that this works. Here's the minor chord instead. I'm just gonna give it a different feel just for fun. And it's not working again. It just won't stop. It just wants to keep going. All right, I'm going to try something else. If I can get it to start in time, I'm going to stop it with the stop button and start it over. Nope. There we go. Might be the end of the line for this loop pedal. So that's just the Aeolian mode. So that's just that Aeolian mode. So now we'll try Dorian. So that's that jazzy sounding one. So now we'll do the Phrygian to make it sound more like kind of like a Spanish guitar kind of thing. Now I'll go minor. Just the Aeolian mode. Now Dorian. So if I just play back and forth, I'm going to go between them and not say anything. And your goal is to decide if it sounds jazzy or if it sounds just kind of like sad or if it sounds almost like, the Spanish guitar kind of sound. And that way you can tell which mode I'm in. But I'll just go back and forth between them a little bit. But I'll try to clearly change when I change. So you kind of get the idea. I was going back and forth between the Dorian, the Phrygian, and the Aeolian modes. Not in that order, though. Okay, and then I think you've probably, if you listen to the other videos on this channel that I've done, you've probably heard the Locrian mode before. The Locrian mode is the one that's very dissonant and kind of sounds like all right. So someone outside is yelling and screaming, so I'm probably gonna have to cut this live stream short, but and maybe have to edit that out. But oh well. I hope y'all didn't hear that. But someone outside is just saying some things. So I hope that everybody had a good time learning the modes. I'm still debating if next week if I'm going to do a live stream or not, since that's Thanksgiving Day here in the US. But we'll see. I might end up doing it. So I will see you guys next time. I hope you all have a great night and a great week. And if you have any questions about any of these modes or anything else, just let me know. And Overly Creative Ones, good to see you on here. I'm so sorry to hear that you're in the hospital. I hope that you feel better. I don't know what's going on with you, but I hope that you're doing okay and that you're healing and recovering from whatever has put you in the hospital. But I hope everything's okay. Okay, good. Yeah, I was trying to talk louder than the words that I heard out there. If anybody has any last minute questions, just let me know right now, because I think it's okay. I think I have a minute to just kind of say some stuff. But yeah, so Thanksgiving's next week, and if I think of something really awesome to do, because of the time going on right now, I'm not going to be traveling anywhere most likely for Thanksgiving, or at least not this late in the day if I do decide to go. But I may just decide to talk to family through through online and the phone and everything instead of getting together with everybody. But I hope everybody out there is being safe and is just having a good time. And once again, if you have any last minute questions, just let me know here. Otherwise, I will answer your questions in the comments. So feel free to leave a comment after this, and have a great week. And I'll see you next Tuesday with a video, and probably will have a live stream, although I'm not sure. So let me know if you have any ideas on things that you'd want to hear on a live stream, and I will see you guys next time. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.